It's time to look back at the VHS franchise one final time, and I will rank each of the movies on a scale of 7 to 1. But first, let's look at the newest installment, VHS Beyond. Six blood-curdling tapes unleash horror in a sci-fi-inspired hell landscape, pushing the boundaries of fear and suspense. Since the VHS movies are an anthology horror, I figure I might as well just talk about each individual segment quickly and give my overall thoughts of if it should or shouldn't be in the best or worst segments, and overall just give my quick thoughts about each one of them. The first segment, Stork, is clearly them putting their best foot forward. The whole thing is obviously where majority of the budget went. The practical effects, the creature effects, it really felt like a screen version of a video game horror movie. It felt like it came right out of the later Resident Evil games. And I loved it for that, because it felt just a different approach than I was expecting for a movie like this, but it was done in a great way. They used the video effects, they used the POV style, the creature effects were fantastic. And it was just a great segment from beginning to end. Based on a story by Jordan Downey, who both writes and directs this, it's cool that he was able to make a online story into a reality. And that's kind of what I love about the VHS franchise, is that it's able to take concepts and put them on the screen that doesn't feel forced, but feels just creative enough to enjoy and see it through, for better or for worse. It's the execution, not so much the ideas. The second segment, Dream Girl, is kind of the opposite. It's generic. It's bland. It's pretty paint by numbers. It's exactly what you kind of expect for the beginning of the segment with the setting in India, which is an interesting, nice touch, because it's cool to see the VHS franchise dwell somewhere outside of the US or what have you. I like that it was able to do a segment in India, and I like that. That was cool. I'm like, use something with Indian culture, something with the vibes of the sensation. The segments where the girl was dancing, that part I'm like, okay, well, now I'm pretty sure I know where this is going. And considering this whole movie was sci-fi based, it really, really narrowed the options of what could happen, and you kind of got the sense from the get-go of like, okay, yep, this is exactly what I think it's going to be. And I was 98% right, and because of that, it didn't feel needed. I think this is one of the segments that could have just been cut because it's just boring. It's not bad enough to be on my worst segments, but it's not good enough to be on the best either. It's somewhere right in the middle. It was okay. The segment was written and directed by Virat Pal, and I'm not really familiar with his work, but the actual filming itself was really well done. I liked this kind of handheld vibe, and the parts where he was on the city streets felt good and felt real, and I liked that. The next segment, Live and Let Dive, it didn't really feel like a horror segment. I mean, there was some horror elements, obviously, but it felt more like an action movie. I like that it started with skydivers and ship crashes. The designs of the creatures were, I don't know, kind of bland. Not bad, just kind of like, oh, okay. I kind of feel like this probably should have been the first segment and Stork should have gone here, because once you kind of see the creature effects of Stork, you're kind of, it's like someone giving you a steak and then someone offering you a bologna sandwich after. You're just like, oh man. It wasn't horrible. It was better than Dream Girl, because at least I felt the intensity, adrenaline rushes of the camera work and the feeling that, oh my, I'm actually in for a ride, you know? And that's kind of part of the appeal of this kind of a segment where you're like, it's just bombastic action, 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 action. Downside was there was less horror and more, I said, just action. Directed by Justin Martinez and written by Ben Turner, and I'm not really familiar with either of their work. Maybe they'll focus more on action. Segment 4 was Fur Babies. And this was the segment I was least looking forward to. Once I heard Justin Long was attached, I knew I was in for some garbage. And this is basically what I was expecting it to be. It's pretty much Justin Long making a quick Cliff Notes version of Tusk, but instead about dogs. I will say this is better than that movie, but that's a very low bar because it didn't take itself too seriously. The creature effects felt more fun. This is a perfect example of less is more. This felt more like a popcorn B-movie, whereas the other movie felt more like it was trying too hard to be serious and funny at the same time without ever having an actual identity. And yeah, I mean, like, this feels more like a trauma movie, which I'm like, okay, fine, it's stupid, but whatever. At least it's a short segment. I will say the lady who is the crazy dog lady who is making these people, she is 100,000% just, she is just hamming it up, and I loved it. I loved her in this. She was just like, imagine a Wisconsin Karen just deciding, oh, I just love my doggos, and she just going nuts. And I'm like, that's what I wanted it to be. That's how it should be. That's how you do, you know, B schlock. You got to have a character who's just so over the top that you can just attach yourself to it. In fact, I would say this is one of the worst segments in the VHS franchise. Replace TKNOGD with this. Wherever that was in the placement of my countdown, which you can find in the links below, that's where I would put this one. But the hands down best segment of the entire movie was the final segment, Stowaway. It was first-time director. It was Alana Pierce, who I've known since IGN and Funhouse. I followed her career, and I was having high hopes that she would do good. And boy, did she deliver. Like, she really carried that whole thing. The entire segment centered around her acting, and damn did she deliver. If she ever sees this, Alana, huge fan, and I can't wait to see what you do next. But this segment was so intense. Like, it was so much with so little being said. It was, you could tell that her character had a lot of resentment, had a lot of pain, had a lot of things she was holding herself back, things in her past she didn't want to talk about. This was her trying to find some sort of value in herself. And also, the creature effects were probably the best since the first segment, except these felt more organic, like more like real and raw. And a lot of that comes from the film that they used with this kind of glossy handheld going to infrared style, and it didn't feel forced. It felt like a vlog. It really, really felt like a vlog. It felt like you found someone's vlog and you weren't supposed to find it, and you found it out in like the Mojave Desert or something, and she performs it so beautifully. Kate Siegel is an actress. She has been in many roles. Fall of the House of Usher. She's been House on Haunted Hill. She's primarily an actress, and for her to direct such a great thing on her first ever directing, and Alana to act in her first ever major role in such an amazing segment, and it being written by Mike Flanagan, who his resume's long list. This is 100% one of the best segments in the entire, and I mean the entire VHS franchise. I would definitely put this at maybe top 3. It's so good. This could be an entire movie, but you would need to have Alana come back. You would need to have her do this, and I want to see this as a full-length movie. I would love to see what this team could do. And this whole segment literally just carried the whole movie into like another level of how good the VHS movies could be. Now that I've given my overall thoughts on VHS Beyond, let's rank all of the movies from 7 to 1. Starting off with number 7, we have VHS Viral. It's bland, it's boring, it's skippable, and yeah, there's not much else to say. Number 6 is going to be extremely controversial. It's going to be VHS 2. Now, hold on. Before you get out your pitchforks, the reason I say this, despite Safe Haven being one of the best segments in the entire VHS franchise, that one segment is the key great segment in an otherwise meh anthology movie. The movie is kind of an incoherent mess that kind of copies the same thing over and over again. One of the segments has a dog POV camera. One of them is just generic zombies. It's such a bland mess. Despite Safe Haven being huge and awesome and that being so good that it blinds everyone else from how good the rest of the movie is. I'm specifically talking about the whole of the film. I would have to put it low because it doesn't carry the whole movie. If one segment is amazing, it does not make a great anthology movie. It makes a good segment in an okay movie. Take that as you will. Next, I'm going to go with VHS 85, the 6th film in the franchise, and despite the filming being fantastic and the fact that they were used real 80s cameras to get those good grainy shots that feel kind of vintage, my biggest problem with the whole movie is the wraparound segment. Because there's 2 wraparound segments in the entire movie. And it's kind of confusing because the first with the lake, if you know, you know, is way better of a wraparound segment. And I didn't know why they needed the other one with the shape-shifting creature. It just felt unnecessary and it kind of distracted. Plus the fact that you had 2 separate segments that were intertwined to each other, it kind of unfortunately forced people to remember a previous segment instead of allowing each segment to just stand alone on its own. And because of that, I kind of have to put it down here. Number 4, I'm going to go with the newest installment of the VHS franchise, VHS Beyond. Despite it being newer, I actually had a lot more fun from A to Z watching this movie. Just felt like a fun popcorn flick. I just put it on and I just enjoyed it from beginning to end. And of course, final segment really stuck with me. I just keep thinking about it and just how well paced, well written some of the segments were, and yes, even the worst segments didn't have anything necessarily horrible with them. The problem with the movie is that it's hindered by science fiction as an overall theme, as opposed to it just being either centered around a year or centered around just finding a bunch of VHS tapes. So with that, you have to really ask yourself, if this is the theme for number 7, what's going to be the theme for number 8? Which does give me high hopes for the future. And who knows, maybe down the road I'll make a revised list. Next, we have the original VHS movie. Despite it being over a decade old, it still surprisingly holds up as an anthology movie. And even the cheesy effects kind of make it almost timeless in a way. And who'd have thought after just this fun little movie about a bunch of horror segments, it would have spawned into a franchise that's lasted 7 movies and over a decade long. It's kind of crazy how things end up working out that way, but it truly was a film that centered around the digital age by looking back at the former age of horror, that being VHSs. And I kind of do love it for that. And even the worst segments in the original VHS are still great, and I love them. It's just a movie you could just pop on any time of year and just have a blast watching. Number 2 is VHS 99. This was the 5th movie in the franchise, and it felt like it was keeping the momentum going of 94, and just felt like they were having fun, and they were kind of going back to their original roots like the first movie, and just doing what they wanted, and all it had to do was being centered around 1999, the pre-analog into the hyper-digital age. There's a lot to do there, and they don't skimp on any of the opportunities that they do. With so many segments, there's so much inventive creativity, and it just felt fun. Hell, even the final wraparound segment actually felt like I was in a haunted house exhibit, just having things just go bah at me, and that was kind of a fun POV experience I didn't get to feel again until the Stork segment from VHS Beyond. So it has a little bit of everything for everyone, and I kind of dug that it did. But the best of the best, in my opinion, is VHS 94. It has perfect use of the time setting, perfect use of film, perfect use of a narrative device. Everything was great about it. There was body horror and disgusting gore. There was suspense and drama. There was just inventiveness wrapped into a bubble of creativity, and I loved every segment. Yes, even the empty wake, which is what I considered the worst segment of this movie, is still great. It's still great. It's still fun to watch, and I love this movie so damn much. Both nostalgia for the 90s and also just the fun vibe to go from beginning to end. All of the VHS movies, with the exception of Viral, all are great in their own way, and they kind of show the creativity and inventive nature of these films. And I love every one of the filmmakers for going all out, and I hope that there will eventually be even more VHS movies down the pipe. But what do you think? What were your thoughts on VHS Beyond, and where would you rank the VHS movies? Let me know in the comments down below. Keep on enjoying Jack-O-Ween.